Hey, it's
Oh.
hey, it's me.
She's a former mayor. They're a former evangelical pastor with dissociative identity disorder. These two like to talk about the topics you're not supposed to talk about. They might cause you to perspire just a bit, but they'll definitely make you inspired. Let's talk religion and politics, and what spirituality and emotional well-being look like in a post-evangelical world. This is Paul and Ashley on Evangelicalish.
All right, I started us off with a little double, I don't know if I call that a double clutch on the button there or a double snap, or I double somethinged.
Maybe
did
just a
some-
double click. Did you
Double
double click
click.
on the opening?
I
Yeah.
double clicked, yes. Yes, I did.
Yes. Yes, you did.
Yes, I did.
Hello. Welcome to
here we are.
Wednesday.
Yeah. Can't decide if I want this light on or not. I look pale and weak.
Well, you're trying out blurring your background, which I think looks cool. So I don't think you look pale. I think you're just not used to the way that looks.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Doug is here. Doug says you blur your background for classes. This I do. Yes, I do. I do it for teaching classes and for being in classes.
Okay. Is that like a teaching protocol thing?
I don't want to bring in my political signs that are behind me into the classroom.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah. Good
So,
point.
no.
Good point. Good point.
So I blur it out.
Well, there's nothing quite like just being kicked in the groin all day, or choose a different body part, punched in the you know what, and rolling in from your day at work onto your weekly podcast to have Doug on the left waiting for you in the waiting room and feel so like, you know what? I got this. I'm gonna hang out with Doug, I'm gonna hang out with the peeps, and just like let it roll off me. Let it roll off. I'm trying, I'm breathing, I'm doing all the things.
Is sensitive biological question. Is getting kicked in the groin for a biological female like massively painful?
It depends on the exact placement and the like force of the kick. I
Yeah.
was going to say punched in the tits, but I thought that might be impolite, so I went with groin. So
Okay.
yeah, but you made me say it.
I mean, I just thought, obviously, for bio males, the kick in the groin is debilitating. And I wouldn't think it would be like joyous for a bio female, but I just wondered if that was a thing, getting kicked in the groin if you were a bio female.
I actually do prefer to say punched in the teeth, but I do try to say that only with like people that I am like not on a podcast. Like I try not to say that on things that are recorded for all of time.
So you had a really shitty day, and
yeah.
So here we are, and we have a plan for the show, but we may just say fuck the world.
We may need to make it all about me. That might be our plan. But no, just not really. Grateful to see Alex here from Brisbane, Kevin from Frog Pond, North Carolina. That sounds like an amazing place. I would love to visit Frog Pond, North Carolina. All the Carolinas, honestly.
I wonder if it's close to Hooterville, North Carolina, or Bug Tussle.
Is there really a Bug Tussle? Or is that just a word that you...
Bug Tussle, yeah, I think like Granny from Beverly Hillbillies lived in Bug Tussle.
That's where you got... Well, you would say that to our children when they were younger, and they would just get such a kick out of the word Bug Tussle. So that was definitely a fan favorite in our household. That and shiitake mushrooms, which you would say when you didn't want to curse in front of the children and say shit, you would say shiitake mushrooms.
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks, Gladys. She says I have beautiful hair. Here's the truth is that I did go to yoga last night. Came home sweating like, a pig. Jumped in the shower, let my hair air dry, overslept this morning. Had to rush out the door for a meeting, and I was like, "You know what? I'm doing, like, day 2 yoga hair for the day." So and I'm
It
getting a
works.
compliment.
It works. All right.
That's encouraging me already.
Uh,
Yeah.
you never told the kids anything about getting punched in the tees, though, I don't think.
No, that's a more recent, like, I feel like last couple year phenomenon. The older our
Okay.
children have gotten, the more free I think our language has become, and, like, we don't worry about saying things in front of your kids anymore when they're the ones teaching you all the latest, like, you know, put
Well,
down cuss
we
words
were
and slang or
never
whatever.
huge sticklers on language with our kids, because I think it's cruel, and stupid. And I used to, as a preacher, say you should say curse words at least once a day to keep
Yeah.
yourself from getting overly religious. But I do tell the story often of uh, I used to try to catch the bad words in the music before it would hit, and CeeLo's song, I can't remember what the song was, but it has the big "fu" in it,
Oh,
and
yeah, that one. Well, F you, that one.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
and
and F you and your something something face, that one? It's like the whole song is about saying F you to the
no,
F.
that's
Oh,
another
okay,
one.
okay. Okay.
"Fu" and your untouchable face. Yeah,
Yes, yes, yes.
no, CeeLo was it was a big pop hit, and I'll have to look it up. But anyway, and so I didn't catch the F bomb. Sam, very small little child, sweetest little heart thing in the back seat, and I'm like, "Oh, Sammy, I'm so sorry. I didn't catch that word and turn it down." And this little voice from the back seat says, "I hear my sister and her friends say that word every day."
Yeah. So much for trying to protect the innocent.
Yeah.
That's what
So
siblings, older brothers and sisters are for, I guess.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
okay, well, I'm learning from Kevin that Frog Pond is in Big Lick Township. Um, that is amazing. Oh, yeah.
Well, Larry Bird was from French Lick, Indiana. So,
Oh, okay.
there's
I
some
wonder what the history is of towns using the word lick in their names.
lick.
Is it like a bend in a river, or is there some natural,
I wonder.
characteristic that the gatherers, the settlers of that, whenever they put the name on there, they were reflecting? Who knows? Who
When
knows?
I was a kid, by the way, when what what I'm sure you would call a stream, we called a crick.
Yeah.
Go
No,
go
we
down to
we
the
did
crick and
crick. We called it
go gigging for
creeks.
crawdads.
Yeah, I heard that. I mean, we would say the word CREEK. We just
Creek.
wouldn't say
Okay.
crick. We would say
Yeah.
creek,
Yeah.
like that. We
Yeah.
had a creek at the end of our neighborhood. We loved going to the creek. It was like just a vacant field with this little stream on it.
Well,
Yeah.
we lived close to where there were literally people named Goober, and there were men that would say, "I want you to meet my wife and my sister," and there would be one woman standing there. We lived in the Ozarks. Well, you lived in the Ozarks too, so
Yes, but I lived in like kind of a big city in that area. Like we thought we were very cosmopolitan. We kind of were. I mean, it was
yeah.
a beautiful. I miss that part of the country, the northwest part of Arkansas.
Yeah. Well, we
Well, I
lived just
do. It's
outside of
beautiful.
Springfield, which was a big city, but we were from Republic, so
Yeah.
that didn't count.
Let's go back to talking about me, okay? Um,
Yes, let's.
okay, so this is the situation. I'm not going to give the specifics, but I think the broad topic is just feeling like when you're trying to get people to like find a common path, like do the hard work of listening to things that you object to because you see that like moving something forward, moving your community forward, moving a relationship forward, whatever. It's like you have to be able to make room for ideas you don't like, approaches you don't like, but like, can we have respect for the, like, everybody's got to do it. Everybody's got to sit and struggle with the fact that they don't like so and so, or they don't like this interest group, or da da da. Right. That's true of everybody in the situation. And like that, like, so we could all just sit around and recite the reasons why we hate each other, and then consider the consequences of that for our surroundings, for our community, for, you could apply this to a family, you could apply it to any intractable sort of like, why are people so ridiculous? I find myself in the great big middle of that kind of a situation, and it is so frustrating. And I am just like ready to be like, tell you what, y'all can all go to hell. That's what you can do. Like, I'm done. Like, cool. Like, let's just, let's just let things basically go to pot. No problem. Let's do that. Cool idea. So
Yeah.
angry.
Mm.
And then I think about just the intense conflict that we find ourselves in at every level of our society, in our, community or public space, civil spaces. And it's like, I know how I'm feeling about a relatively small and kind of minor issue in the big scheme. And then I think about the levels of entrenchment, like all the way up to like what's going on with, with our national scene, our national politics. And it's just like, I don't know how people get up every day and then and like stay hopeful. Like, you know what? I'm gonna keep trying at this. I can't imagine what that is like right now.
Yeah, and we've been pushing to see great things happen in our city for a long time, and we've kind of experienced this. Yeah, let's do something great in our city. Let's let's get gay marriage banned. Like, and you're like, wait, no, wait, what? No, that's not what we're talking about. And we kind of just keep coming back there, and we have friends who have moved out of Fresno and then reach out back to us and say, oh, there really is another world out here where people are a little more interested in seeing good things happen in their city rather than just
Yeah.
being the scorpion and the frog thing.
Oh God, that's it. The
It's,
scorpion and the frog. It's just I don't know if it's
you think
well,
everybody
I do
knows the scorpion and the frog story?
well,
Just
look it up.
basically the
Yeah.
the scorpion asking the frog for a ride across the river, and the frog is like, no, you'll sting me and kill me. And the scorpion's like, if I do that, we'll both drown. Why would I do that? And so the frog's like, okay, jump on. And then they get halfway across the river, and the scorpion stings him. And as they're both going down to drown, the frog says, why did you do that? And he's like, I'm a scorpion, that's what I do. And
Yeah. It feels
the
like that.
yeah, that's what it is. Like, we kill things and keep Fresno shitty because that's what we do.
Yes. 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 We wholeheartedly committed to that.
Yes.
Wholeheartedly. And you know what? It's like, but I have the power. I have control.
Yeah.
So, great. You have control over like a bunch of shitty stuff. Wonderful. Bravo.
Yeah.
Like, now what?
It's like, who told us the thing once about it's not so crazy that Fresno shoots itself in the foot. It's crazy how quickly they reload and do it again.
Okay.
So yeah. And you've been pushing that rock uphill for quite a while now. So
Yeah.
I can
I
get why
know.
you're a little drained
This
today.
I don't know. I do think there are times when it's like you're done, your season's done. Like let other people step in. It's their fight now, or it's their vision. I don't want to say it negatively. It's their vision, it's their spirit, like their pursuit. And I'm wondering, like, maybe that's the thing. It's just like people need to experience, um, kind of give people over to their worst ambitions. Why
Well,
not?
and I think there's certainly if there's biblical precedents to that, of the Hebrew scripture story of King Saul and God, Samuel like talking to God and saying, "Oh, this is the people want a king. This is really a bad idea." And God is like, "Yeah, and it's what they want, and so we're going to give it to them, and they're not going to like it. It's going to be really bad." And I think we're in the same time where like the universe gives us what we ask for on a fairly regular basis, and that includes the White House and our societal structures. And I
Yep.
think a lot of people have been asking for where we are. I mean, I still see people posting today like, everything Trump is doing is exactly what I voted for. And you're like, okay, then you're just either stupid or
Yeah.
a terrible, terrible person. I don't know.
You know, I have a friend actually, or a colleague, who spent time not long ago with the Dalai Lama. And they were having a conversation about a very large issue, on planet Earth, and one that you could easily be like, we got to figure this out. Like, it's in everyone's best interest. What's, like, come on, like, let's figure it out. And the response from the Dalai Lama was like, you know what, your job, your work, I'm totally paraphrasing because I wasn't there and I just got snippets of it, but it was something like, your job is just to go ahead and surrender to the fact that what you're saying you want isn't going to happen. Like,
Yeah.
you have to let go. And this feeling of like, you know, bracing for like trying to make things go the way you want them to, the Dalai Lama is like, that's the problem, not the bigger policy item that you're talking about. And this person relayed that to me, and I was like, I've spent a long time being frustrated. Like, no, we have to change this thing. And we can't give up. And now I'm just sitting there going like, oh, yeah, maybe that is actually the art, and the art of life is to like let go of that feeling of you need to work to produce a certain outcome. Like, you just can't.
Yeah. And I tell about the story of Ezekiel in the Hebrew scripture where that, this call on Ezekiel's life was, I could send you to people of a foreign tongue and they would listen to you, but I'm going to send you to your own and they're not.
Oh,
And,
yeah, that.
and that feels like our story, and so our job is not necessarily to get people to listen. Sometimes it's just to tell the truth and then let people make their own decisions. And those decisions are bad sometimes. And then sometimes you have to face the consequences of those decisions before you decide, ooh, I shouldn't keep making bad decisions. So yeah, Alex says in the comments here, that's wisdom to know when the fight isn't any longer ours to fight. Good wisdom there.
Mm, 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 mm. Oh my gosh. Anyway, well, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot at this time. And I hate to be so somber. And I feel like I'm usually like the sort of lighthearted sidekick on Ish Weekly. And Paul is usually the like big, hard, heavy things to say. Well, and I'm like,
Shit is happening.
but this happened on Real Housewives this week and we can fix it. Don't worry, we can fix it. That's my thing. And this week I'm like, no, I give up.
Uh,
Anyway, so I'm
Guy,
sure everyone's glad they've tuned in to this.
Guy is with us from Canada, and Canada had their big anti-Trump election. So congratulations,
Congratulations.
Canada. Yeah,
Yes. Okay.
they
Oh,
they
Canada.
they still know how to vote somewhat more reasonably than we do. Pucky, by the way, says this might be good. We could ask our group that's with us, like, what do you do when you have just this fucking bad day and you're like,
Mm.
I'm done. I quit. I give up. But Pucky says your feelings are valid. Ashley, she's validating your feelings.
I'm so appreciative of that, of the encouragement.
And Pucky, I'm sorry. If she is not your pronoun, I'm sorry about that. I thought it was, but I could be wrong on that. And Guy is saying, yes, sir, to the election victory.
Well, and we're getting a live report from Australian politics as well from Alex that a similar candidate has been losing traction since Trump blew everything up. So that's, the sort of the equal and opposite reaction is good news around the world. Yeah, more of that. More of that.
I've been having fun today just laughing that Donald Trump was given a really bad Photoshop picture of a guy's tattoos on his knuckles, and Grandpa Donnie believes that it was a real tattoo. I've just been laughing nonstop all day about, because I know that this guy is the biggest pathological liar. But this is, I think
he got duped. He just flat out got duped.
He got duped by his own bullshit, or either he got that from social media. What I think may have happened, if you haven't seen the video, you got to see it from the. But what I think, well, I'm all blurred out with my hand here, but
right in front of your nose.
I think I think somebody gave him, and it had the tattoos because somebody has said, "Oh, look, he's got a mushroom, so that's an M or whatever." So, and the cross, that means one, and so they were saying these equate to MS-13, and so somebody like put the letters across there, MS-13, to make the connection, and Trump literally thought this guy had MS-13 tattooed in an Arial 11 font on his hand, and he was arguing with a reporter from ABC last night, and it's just it's funny and delicious, and then you think, and this is why this guy is sending people to a torture prison in El Salvador. So then it's not quite so funny, but what a dumb man. Like, but I don't know. I guess that's small consolation in some ways, but I don't know. At least it gave me a laugh today.
Well, let me say, I think what is amusing is that there are staff members on his team scrambling behind the scenes, like that to me is not a surprise. I feel like there probably have been plenty of other times when he's kind of like been like, no, I saw it, it's real, and that's going to happen. I think about the staffers who are freaking out. They don't know if they're going to be fired or not. So, some people are going to be like, yeah, we don't care. Donald Trump can say whatever he wants and no one ever holds him accountable. So don't worry about it. Other people are like, that's it. Heads are going to roll. Who gave him that photo? Like somebody, that conflict that's going on behind the scenes is what is amusing to me, because that's like in a political environment like that, that's the way those things go.
Yeah. Although they tend to, I think in the Trump administration, not fire somebody who does that, because then again, that's like setting the person out there who can go tell the story of like, let me tell you about Donald Trump and how stupid he is, kind of
thing. But I think they do take it out on lower level people. And I think there are plenty of heads that have probably already rolled, and, they have NDAs or something like that. I don't know.
Like there was a report, Caroline Leavitt, known as the Nazi Barbie. I can't say the word on YouTube, I guess. Or they call her Swastika Barbie, I guess. She was ripping a reporter a new one the other day because he was asking, like, if a grunt soldier, he didn't say grunt, low-level soldier, put out military secrets on social media, he would of course be dishonorably discharged immediately. And yet the head of the Department of Defense, doesn't get that. So Gladys has some update on your lick.
I was just reading that for the folks who are listening to audio only.
This show is off to a roaring start, let me tell
It
you.
is. I'm sure people are so glad that we took a break last week, but thank God we're back this week. And a town name, Lick, refers to a natural salt spring or deposit where animals, including humans, would lick the salty water or mineral deposits. These licks were often located near sulfur springs. I knew it was something about, like, something that people needed to survive back in
Wait,
the
you
day.
gotta see here as she continues
Oh,
on.
for example, places like Big Bone Lick
Big
and
Bone
Knob
Lick,
Lick
Kentucky, and Knob Lick, Indiana.
were named after these natural salt springs. Why is there not a Real Housewives of Big Bone Lick? This is what I must know. Why hasn't Bravo discovered Knob Lick, Kentucky?
Why? I mean,
Oh.
why are they all named like Knob Lick? Why wouldn't they ever just be named like Beautiful Meadow Lick or something like that?
Well, that's a good yeah, I wonder what maybe I'll bet you the whatever these two licks were shaped like a big bone and a knob. I mean, people were so
Yeah.
literal back then. Like, you go to that thing, it looks like a knob. You can get your licks there, and then you're going to turn left and head and go to the big bone. And, like that's the way life used to be, I think.
Okay.
Anyway, all right. So
Can
we
I
do
can I tell
actually,
one funny
yeah,
story before we jump into
yeah.
from my class the other day? We were talking about gaming in my mass media class, and so I'm asking the students, how often do you play video games and such? And so I said, imagine me at 6 years old, Christmas Day, the family present, we get this console that we hook up to our TV. And for the first time ever, we can control what's happening on the television set. We don't just sit and watch it. And I said, and this is what we saw and what we controlled on the screen. And I hit a YouTube video of Pong. And these high school seniors were like looking at the screen of this boop, boop,
Yeah.
boop, boop, boop.
Oh,
And they were just looking at, and it had exactly the effect I wanted it to have. They're like looking at me and they're looking at the screen and they're like, WTF. And I'm like, wait, it gets going faster. Like when you're good at it, it gets, and the video, like they start, once you hit a few in a row, it starts speeding up. And, I, and they were just like looking at me like, this was entertaining for you people. Like, yes, it was. Yes, it was. It was one of the most amazing things we've ever seen.
I actually miss that, like, because I'm younger than you are. So the
You weren't in the Pong era, huh?
I wasn't in the Pong era, but I think my first exposure to video games was Atari. Was Atari the did Atari do
Yeah,
Pong?
I think
Okay.
no, it
There
was
was
another company that doesn't exist anymore.
okay.
Atari was not Space Invaders, which was one of the early ones, but
Mm.
Atari was like Asteroids and Donkey Kong and all of those, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah. Something, but table tennis, like electronic, I think there was like a first gen sort
Oh,
of
was there?
Atari
Okay.
version of that, but I'm not sure. I remember the
Okay.
joystick on the little
Yeah.
home video game thing that my friend's brother got. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And we also talked in that class about the damsel in distress narrative that video
Mm,
games are tend to be dehumanizing to females and do this sort of incel storyline of romance is a woman being kidnapped and tied to a train track and
mhm, mm.
nearly chopped in half, and the man saving her just in time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, when you stop and think about it, that's everywhere.
it's Project 2025 ish.
Mm, 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 mm. Um, all right. Well, I've managed to pick myself up off the floor, and I feel a bit of fresh air and oxygen, I think we should take a look at the video clips that you've prepared for us tonight.
Okay.
Have a little fun with that.
Yeah. We're in thinking about topics this week. One, I get a lot of, why would I take your advice? Look at how you're dressed or how you present. Or the one that I get more than any maybe is, you need mental help. And I'm like, yes, I do. That's why I go to a therapist once a week, every week. But what does that have to do with the content of the video? But so a couple of interesting interviews this week. One was with Sarah McBride, who is the first trans congressional representative ever in America from Delaware. First ever in America, period. She is from Delaware. And she's Nancy Mace's best friend. But
Crazy.
also, Katie Couric had a gentleman on who, and I'm sorry, I don't have his name in front of me. He's written a book about Project 2025. After the election, he actually sat down and read all 997 pages or whatever it is. And he said he kept saying to his wife, like, oh my God, this thing is really freaking scary. So let's just start with that. Katie Couric was asking him, like, well, why is Project 2025 so scary now that we see it quickly going into place? Let me make sure I'm sharing audio. Yes. Why is it so scary? And this is what the author had to say.
Kind of policy blueprints every 4 years. And often they're just kind of lists of policies people want. And that's what I thought this was too. But this is really a whole scheme for remaking the federal government and then remaking American society. I think its ambitions are just much broader, and it has methods. I mean, they've thought about how to make these things happen in a way that the typical policy wish list just doesn't have.
Like what? I mean, tell us the methods. So it's one thing, the policies, but how do they hope to implement it to get sort of widespread acceptance? And we'll talk about its popularity or lack thereof later. But, it's much more. Give us a little more meat to understand the methodology they hope to incorporate.
Yeah, I mean, the centerpiece is taking charge of the federal government and taking charge of the executive branch in a way that no president has before. So they lay out how to take over the Justice Department, how to use the Office of Management and Budget, which is, kind of a dusty agency as the command center for taking charge of the federal government, how to use the Office of Presidential Personnel. And then to sort of accrue presidential power by taking over independent regulatory agencies. So things like, the FCC or the FTC, traditionally, they work relatively independently. They're appointed by the president, they're leaders, but then they do their own thing. They think that's unconstitutional. They want Trump to be directing those things. And once you have control of all of them, and you start to push civil servants out as well, you can make the federal government do what you want to do. And that includes creating this very conservative vision of society.
So that's where we start.
Mm-hmm.
It is about remaking government and society into the image of the evangelicals that you and I went to church with many moons ago.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, that's success. That's the vision of success, is the center of the target. And it's interesting because I've been in, I guess, two major government agencies that have let's call it shared governance, okay? Which our federal system is shared governance, checks and balances. No one entity has all the power, et cetera. I've worked in a university setting, and then I've worked in a strong mayor form of government in a major charter city in the U.S., which is here in California. And I will say this, and I was 8 years at the university, 8 years at the city of Fresno. When I was at the university, I worked directly for the provost and president. There was always frustration that the faculty senate had power over X, Y, and Z. There was always a lamenting of like, I just can't do exactly the way I want. That was true when I was at the city of Fresno, and serving as mayor. the executive branch would walk right up to the line of like, I will push it as hard as I can. And the council would walk up right up to the line and try to push it, as much as they could. And we would go, "Arr." And then there was some kind of tiebreaker. City attorney would say, well, this is per city charter. This isn't what and then like but the frustration is normal. I get that. I get why people and Trump one felt stunted, and all of these judges over the years, the Federal Society, whatever, they're like, no, we really do want a king. We do want a king. We want the executive to be a king. And now let's figure out how to make it happen. Like, I get that frustration, but I can't relate to the like crossing the line and then saying like for the rest of time, as far as we can spend things and control them, we want to blow up the checks and balances. We want to blow up the shared governance. Like, I've
Yeah.
never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
Every state legislator I've ever worked with is always so mad at whoever the governor is, whether it's Arnold Schwarzenegger or Jerry Brown or Gavin Newsom, always convinced that they're the governor's team's the idiots and we're the smart people. Frustration, vent. And like, okay, now let's get back into formation and figure out how to make this work within the confines of our authority. Like, that's it. Like, that's kind of government,
Yeah. And, the idea is, we were making this case of like, you don't want to vote for Donald Trump. He's got these Project 2025 people behind him. They want to have a dictatorship. They want to get rid of liberal democracy. And we thought that was a compelling argument. But it turns out, no, there are a lot of people who think, oh, democracy is in the way of the society that we want to see. And
Yeah.
Here is another clip where the author talks about why Project 2025 and the people who run it, the Heritage Foundation and all of that, or who put it all together, why they feel America needs to be changed.
Philosophically, in your view, having read it?
Yeah, I think it has a very long history. And so, DEI is a boogeyman often in the document, but you go further back and there are concerns about, Title IX, for example. And they want to use Title IX to enforce certain priorities, but also they're very skeptical of it. They're skeptical of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They're skeptical of the New Deal itself. So, it's a sense that over the last century, things have happened to change the way America works that have taken us away from the Christian founding they see. And they want to reclaim things in that way.
So you talk about Russell Vought, casually mentioned he's a self-described Christian nationalist. So can you talk about what Christian nationalists believe and how his principles bled into this document?
They believe that this is a Christian nation. They believe that.
Well, can you explain why they believe that?
They look at the founders and they say many of the founders were Christians. They see language about God, and they simply believe that since European settlers arrived in what is now the United States, they were bringing Christian ideas, and that is the foundation of the country. And they think that has always been in the DNA, but we've started to drift away from that.
Well, I mean, so how does this fit in with sort of Donald Trump's seeming obsession with anti-Semitism and sort of Jewish American citizens?
They often use this language about a Judeo-Christian society, and they talk about, for example, a biblically grounded vision of the family. And so it's a little bit broader, but very much it's focused around Christianity. So, for example, they think that there should be all people should have a Sabbath. They should not have to work for at least a day a week, and if they do, they should have to get time and a half. This is an idea that maybe could have appeal across the spectrum, but it's phrased in these very religious ways. And they say, we assume this would be Sunday, but it could, for example, be Friday evening to Saturday evening if for somebody of a different faith. So there's a little bit of accommodation, but the norm is very much Christianity, and so much of the policy stems from Christianity.
Yeah. So it is putting Christianity into civil law, which, by the way, is something Jesus never, ever,
also
ever said
a particular brand and interpretation of
Right.
Christianity. I mean, like that to me is the biggest, like, I don't know, log in the eye kind of thing, is like, all right, let's say you are really committed to living a life as authentic and aligned to like Jesus in the Bible. Like, wouldn't that draw you into a pursuit of understanding? Well, who really was that person? What really was the language? Like all the things that we talk about on the show. And I think of our show with Neil Klotz Douglas like a couple
Mhm.
months back. And I was like, nothing of what you are saying in the original language sounds anything like the pictogram felt board that I saw in Sunday school. Like, and if what you're saying is here's the actual language, the words, how they translate from the Aramaic, and like it's more, like Abun, the Abba and womb put together is like father, mother, the source of all life. It like just that alone is transformative when you think about like, oh, that's the spirit, the God spirit that Jesus was talking to and about, was this like, like father, mother, all nurturing, life-giving force, not like daddy, that I was taught all the time. Oh, daddy, 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 you know. Anyway, like, so let's just stop right there. Like, can we not interrogate a little bit? Like, what's your definition of Christianity, and like how come your version and not all the like this is like pretty objective. You could argue about that. You could interrogate this.
Yeah. And Jesus particularly eschewed power and wealth. Uh, the idea was if you're a good person, you become wealthy. That was part of the mindset of his culture at the time. And he was like, no, you're not poor because you're a sinner. And it's like we're going back to that. There's nothing Christian about saying let's take over the government, and the government we want to take over is one that is anti-tax, anti-poor, anti-foreigner. None of those things line up with the story of Christ.
Yep. Have you noticed this sort of trend? I think it's like breaking through, that people are talking about like the comeback of Stoicism and how the founders were Stoics more than they were like what we would consider
Yeah.
evangelical Christians. Have you seen that in your
I
algorithms?
haven't seen that necessarily, but I definitely was raised on history classes and history books that said the founding fathers were more deist than they were Christian.
Yeah.
Um, and then we would learn that Benjamin Franklin he was the Elon Musk of his day, impregnating every woman he could find. There wasn't a lot of Christian about it's kind of the same thing. It's like, yeah, they were Christian. And of course they owned slaves. And of course they didn't think women were fully human. And of course they thought only white, rich landowners should run the government and vote and have a voice and all of these things. So it's always a bit of a, how do we declare this is our moral standard? These men who made a compromise that put us in a position to have slavery and ultimately Jim Crow laws for most of the first 200 plus years of our history as a country because of the compromises they made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should have Douglas, gosh, help me, Neil Klotz
Neil
Douglas
Douglas
back on the
Klotz.
show.
Yeah.
A, B, we should get a good source on Stoicism
Okay.
to come back. Maybe our friends over at the Happy Heretic podcast might have shed some light there.
Yeah.
Um, but and I'd love to learn more. What folks that I'm like hearing about this from, like the focus is much more on like inner journey, like your own spiritual self, not this like, let me focus on what all these other people should be doing. I'm just curious about that. Like, is that,
Yeah.
I don't know, that seems like that could be uh maybe a positive coming out of this era, that we kind of
Yeah.
get that squared away.
And a lot of the atheist podcasters I watch a lot would say you don't ever see Jesus mentioned in the founding documents.
Mm.
God, creator, and the God is never in the Constitution at all. There's no mention of God whatsoever in the Constitution, and then only in the Declaration of Independence is endowed by the Creator, and the thought of lot is, and they put that in there because everybody, it was just, you said the year of our Lord. You didn't have
Yeah.
to be a Christian. Everybody would say, in the
Yeah.
year of our Lord, such and such happened.
It was a cultural norm and just an
Yeah,
accepted, like, starting point for, like, squaring up with people on what you're about to talk about. Yeah.
exactly. That
Yeah.
it wasn't nearly as Christian as it was just cultural.
Yeah.
So, and when we talk about this Project 2025 and the idea of family, and they want to get back to the family and be family focused, it's just exactly what you were just saying. And this gentleman in the interview says it's a very particular type of family that they're interested in.
Become increasingly diverse, right?
Right.
So talk about that. And, they have this very Ozzie and Harriet
Yes.
throwback vision of American families and American life. And you say they want to push women away from the workforce, but not completely get them out of the workforce. Can you explain sort of how they view what is sort of ideally this American family?
For them, the highest calling for a woman is motherhood, and everything should be oriented around that. They want women to be having more children. They want them to be spending as much time as they can with the children. So that ideally means being at home for the children. Failing that, they should be, they should have childcare on site where they're working. The father should be working. The father should be the breadwinner. They should be the focus of the family. The children should be gender conforming. So they're boys or they're girls. They, wear blue or pink. Trans people are sort of pushed into the shadows. They're skeptical of same-sex marriage. They don't talk about overturning the precedents, but they say, and this is not true, but they claim that same-sex marriage has higher divorce rates. I spent a long time trying to track down how they justify this. There's no data to back it up. It's a whole program, and it's very old school, I'd say.
Yeah. And so anti women.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, just really bizarre.
I think there are women involved who would say that this is, in fact, this is pro women. This is
How so? I mean, I think pro women is being able to make the choice, right?
It's very much this trad wife aesthetic, as you say. They think that women will be happier in this circumstance.
Very.
Handmaid's Tale on its way.
Yeah. Oy.
And so it works its way, when President Obama got elected was when I really looked around the people that I was affiliated with in our church networks and said, guys, like, we really sound racist in our hatred of President Obama. It sounds like if he were a white man, we would be talking differently. And everybody's like, no. But this idea of white Euro norm as godly, it's not just like we like white Euro culture, or like I think we learned once, white people don't think we have a culture. We just think we are culture. And so it's very white Euro based. And that makes white Euro male based. And it really does marginalize everybody else. But that is what they believe is godly, that white men very patriarchally and benevolently have a dictatorship over the society. And that's when things work. That's when people know their place and things work. It's horrifying.
Yeah, it really is. It's really, really, really deeply entrenched. It's
And it is
you know,
extremely racist. It is extremely misogynist. It is.
yeah.
Even when people say, "Well, I'm not that," but it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to play something from Sarah McBride. I've got a couple of sound bites. We don't have a lot of time left, but Sarah McBride, as I mentioned, is the trans congressional representative from Delaware, and she was on Pod Save America. It's a really fabulous interview, but just I'll start with her take on why, when America has become very accepting of LGB rights, why did the T suddenly kind of drop off in American society? And I thought her comment on this was very interesting. So let's take a listen.
Forged message. So I agree.
So it's maybe a good segue into you made this point when you were talking to The Atlantic about the ways in which we took certain things for granted, and that maybe that some of the glow off of a lot of work on the LGB was hopefully carrying over quickly to the protection of the T, and that maybe we didn't do enough work on helping people understand the T part of the LGBT, and that made the support a little bit more shallow than we realized. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. So I remember back in 2015, 2016, when it felt like we were on this unending, cresting wave of progress for the entirety of the LGBTQ community, as we saw, the bathroom bill blow up in Pat McCrory's face in North Carolina, the governor who had signed it into law. As general public support and cultural acceptance of trans people seemed to be growing and growing and growing pretty rapidly, people would say, why do you think this is happening so quickly? And I think I rightfully observed, I was like, well, I think one, there was, to your comment, there was a transfer of support from the LGB to the T because it's all one acronym. But I think two, there was another lesson that people had in that moment, which was they were like, I remember not understanding gay people. And because of that, I remember being wrong on marriage. And I don't want to be wrong again just because I don't understand trans people. So I'll get on board with trans rights, even though I don't understand trans people. And what that meant was that support was sort of a mile wide, but an inch deep. It was a house built on sand. And I think because of that, we were lulled into a false sense of security, which I've said multiple times here. And I think didn't sort of do the necessary work, as unfair as it might be, because change making is not always fair. We didn't do the necessary work that the gay rights movement had done over a period of 20 years of deepening understanding of gay people, so that the support for marriage was built on genuine understanding. We didn't do that work because we thought we were past it. And I think one of the lessons for me now is that if we want to have any fighting chance of getting this thing back on track for trans people, we've got to return to the basics. We've got to fill a knowledge gap that exists and still exists. And that is unfair. It feels like we've been fighting for a while. But again, you can't overcome marginalization if you aren't going to grapple with the fact that marginalization is inherently unfair and change.
So I think that conversation is just fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, really good word. I know you sent that to me and I have not. I want to listen to the whole thing. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people are like, wow, the Democrats lost because, and when I say people, I'm talking about like Joe and Mika on their morning show on MSNBC and Gavin Newsom.
Hold on. I watch Joe and Meek every morning. So if you're going to say something about them, you got to run it past me first. You tell me what you think they say, and I'll tell you if it's true or not.
Well, I know after the election, they were saying we spend too much time talking about trans issues, and they pointed at that as one of the big reasons the Democrats lost.
They said we focus too much time on, well, let me say it this way. the electorate was over here talking about the price of eggs, and they turned to the Democrats, who were focusing on marginalized people groups and and waving the democracy flag. And then the Republic, obviously the Trump people, the ad they pointed to as running over and over and over again in swing districts during football season was the Kamala Harris trans law, that she, like the law that actually Trump put into place, but they made it out like Kamala Harris did it. So they're pointing to that, I think.
Yeah. And so Sarah McBride says in this interview, like, it's really important to show that she is just trying to live and exist. And so from my feed, I get all the time this right-wing trope and mantra of get mental help. Like, they think they have been told, and because their life is directed by this societal norm, that Sarah McBride is insane.
Right.
Like, that person we just heard talking is
Right.
mentally incapable of making proper choices in her life.
Right. Which is, I mean, wasn't it the case that people thought that you you became gay because of a sexually transmitted disease that went to your brain and messed you? I mean, they're this is the same exact thing that gay people went through. Now it's just applied to trans people, right?
Yeah, very much. And so, you know, part of what Sarah McBride was saying you have to do is we have to show that trans people are just human beings trying to live. And it's the
Right.
nutballs like Nancy Mace. And I guess there's a story of Lauren Boebert, because one of the other points that Sarah McBride makes in that thing, I wish I could have played the soundbite, is like, this is going to cost women's rights. This isn't just going to hurt trans people, it's going to hurt women. Lauren Boebert saw a woman in the bathroom at the Capitol the other day, thought it was Sarah McBride, because apparently everybody with short bobbed hair and brown hair is Sarah McBride. And so she ran and got Nancy Mace, and they confronted this woman, and it turned out it was a woman, a biological woman. We saw the same thing happen in a marketplace thing the other day.
Wow.
Somebody confronted a big woman with a big body of being trans in a women's restroom. She was an employee of the store, and the store fired her for making the customers uncomfortable because she confronted the customer saying, "I'm not trans, I am a woman," using this restroom.
Whoa.
So
Whoa.
God forbid you have a daughter who is good at sports and doesn't look
Yeah.
white, blonde, Barbie girly, because there's
Yeah.
going to be some asshole somewhere along the way. It's going to say, prove that that's a girl, prove it. And it's not going to be a very happy day for you. So these are the things that are important. And I know a lot of people are like, well, why are you fighting for the trans athletes in sports? And it's like, because if you can take people out of any portion of society and say, you don't get to participate here, it just makes it easier to say it in other parts of society, here, there, and everywhere. So,
Holy gee, Laura's just breaking news here on Ish. Every single Republican on the Judiciary Committee just voted to allow Trump to deport American citizens. Eric Swalwell just posted a video 2 minutes ago. Okay, we'll have to go check that out and
we'll have
find
to
out what's
check that
going
out.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a scary moment, and Trump's going to do anything he can to try to distract from the fact that he's crashed the American economy.
Yeah.
So who knows what horrible things are coming. So,
And the
hang on,
geopolitical
everybody.
backlash. I mean, the what's happening around the world
Yeah.
in response, it's truly global.
Yeah. And what I say on the trans in sports thing, because I have good people who have good thoughts on a lot of things, who say, yeah, but what if the sports thing, it doesn't seem fair, and I once had a guy ask me, well, what would you say if it was your daughter who lost her position on a team because of a trans athlete? And I thought about it for just a bit and said, I would say to my daughter, now we know our daughter's not a great athlete, but were she? Um, I would say to our daughter, honey, this is sad and I'm very sorry. And we would grieve it with her. But we would also say, sports doesn't define you and it's not the most important thing in the world. And what defines us as a family is integrating, allowing this person to live and be a human being and not being a part of marginalizing anybody as best we can live that out. And so it's actually an honor to get to be a part of honoring a people group sacrificially, and we'll find another way to make your life fulfilling. We'll find another team for you to play on. And some of that is from a privileged place. I absolutely understand that. But I think more privileged people should say, what's more important, my daughter's place on a sports team or getting a 5th place medal like Riley Gaines, or being human to other human beings and saying you matter? And I think
Well,
there's a whole lot of
speaking,
that
yeah,
mixed up in there. Yeah.
speaking of our daughter, we will
Mm.
again be off the air next week because we'll be visiting our daughter and celebrating her as she finishes her graduate program. And we have a wonderful family time planned. And yeah, so you'll have to watch reruns of Ish next week at 6 o'clock p.
Yeah. All right. Love you guys. And Ashley, we hope you're feeling better.
Thank you all. Thanks for buoying me tonight. And we'll see you in 2
Oh, I
weeks.
thought you were going to say thanks for booing me. I'm like, what?
Good buoying. Buoying.
All
Yeah.
right.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.